The news of Israel's plans to construct thousands of new settler homes in the occupied Palestinian territories has not been received well by the world. The United Nations and the European Union are among those condemning the plans. I'm Femi Oke.
And I'm Malika Bilal. Today, part 2 of our discussion on Israel's expansion plans. We'll get into the impact this could have on the Palestinian-Israeli peace process and the role the international community plays in all of it.
To the American people, we're grateful for the support Israel has received over many, many decades. Our alliance is based on shared values, shared interests, a sense of shared destiny, and a partnership that has endured differences of opinions between our two governments over the best way to advance peace and stability in the Middle East. I have no doubt that our alliance will endure the profound disagreement we have had with the Obama administration and will become even stronger in the future.
That was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responding to former US Secretary of State John Kerry. In December, Kerry came to the defense of the United Nations vote against Israeli settlements.
Despite this, Israel has gone full force in the last few weeks, approving expansion plans in the occupied West Bank.
The news has raised concerns from many in the international community who believe settlement expansion derails the possibility of peace. So to help us talk about this, we have Suhad Bishara. She is the director of the Land and Planning Rights Unit for the Haifa-based organisation Adalah. Emmanuel Miller is a political analyst in Jerusalem. Atta Hindi is an international human rights lawyer coming to us from Ramallah. And Josh Haston, he is a talk radio host for the Land of Israel Network in the West Bank. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to have you here. A couple of headlines. I'm just intrigued as to how you reacted to them when you first saw them. EU deeply regrets Israel's settlement expansion. And I'm going to click on just one more for you to check out. UN condemns huge Israeli settlement plan. Emmanuel, when you see those headlines, what was the first reaction you had?
I think it's a storm in a teacup. A real big mountain made out of a molehill. The settlements comprise about 5% of the land of the West Bank. The other 95% of Palestinian property is self-governed, and they can do what they want with inside of their own areas. And all of us know that the future of this conflict will be resolved by negotiations between the two sides, and whatever happens, there will be land swaps. With the settlements and lands within Israel, they'll be swapped over, and there will be an equal amount of land exchange hands. So it makes no difference that there's a bit more land is taken here because a little bit more land will be given over. So it's a big deal made out of nothing.
Can I jump in?
I'd love to comment on that headline if I can.
Yeah. Atta and Josh, I hear you both. Atta, you go first. Josh, you go second. Josh, you
Sure,
there.
I mean,
Josh, you there. Go ahead.
I'm here.
I see you.
It's funny. It's unfortunate. It's that the United Nations is obsessed with Jews in Judea building patios and adding to their homes when you have 500,000 dead in Syria. If only the United Nations would have as many resolutions to stop the bloodbath in Syria. I mean, they're obsessed with Israel. We see this every single year, whether it's the UN Security Council, whether it's the UN Human Rights Council. It doesn't matter what it is, the disproportionate focus on what's going on in Israel, specifically in Judea and Samaria, when you have 500,000 dead Syrians, and the condemnations that they don't get, and the effort is just not there in order to stop that bloodbath. Instead, the focus is on Jews building patios. So it's unfortunate.
I mean, this is a very interesting point. It's usually brought up every once in a while. Is why not look at Syria? Why not look at other places in the world? Because I'm, as a human rights activist and lawyer, I agree completely. I mean, we have a lot of problems, but it's good that individuals can recognize that they are in fact committing violations, and they're saying that our violations are not to the extent that the Syrians are doing it. So maybe you should focus on the bigger badder guys, and then leave our bad deeds to the side. In terms of the
are you saying patios and human lives are the same?
It's not about thing? It's about the land.
I mean, that's really what
it can't be talking about the same breath.
1 to 2.5,
500,000 people dead.
1% of all permits that are, in fact, submitted to the Israeli civil administration are eventually approved. The rest are either rejected, around 95%, and the remainder are actually ignored. And this is for basic humanitarian needs, such as schools, women's clinics, water projects, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where it's going to come down to, because the Palestinians who have in fact been cooperating, even to the point where they're arresting individuals for the Israelis, arresting Palestinians when the Israelis make that request for them, they're the ones that are being, and from my perspective, the only thing that should be negotiated with the Israelis are the terms of withdrawal, the full civilian and military withdrawal from the West Bank. Those are the timetable is all that's negotiable. Besides that, I don't see anything else.
So Josh and Atta, we started this conversation. Josh and Atta, we started this conversation with your views on those headlines, the international condemnation from the UN and the EU. I wanted to share two other views from people online about those headlines. So EU, just as a reminder to our audience, EU deeply regrets, that's in quotes, Israel's settlement expansion. So here is what Sai Palestine has to say about that. Israel loves that the EU deeply regrets, as opposed to actually doing anything about it, like imposing sanctions. Another person is not convinced. This is Al-Masi, who says the UN and the US treat Israel like a baby. They break nearly all resolutions, but no action is ever taken. Suhad, your thoughts on that?
Yes,
are these statements empty?
I think we were all happy to hear about the Security Council resolution from last December. I do think that the international community is not doing enough. I think this is an international conflict. The fact that the Palestinian territories of 67 is occupied is a fact, and is a legal fact under international law, and other catastrophes cannot be the formula to delete this fact and to demand the international community to take responsibility of this international conflict and resolve it according to international law. What's happening in Syria, what's happening in other countries is unfortunate, but that does not give Israel any right to continue the occupation, to continue expanding the settlements, and to continue occupying the Palestinian people, definitely. And I do agree that the international community is not doing enough to resolve this issue based on the international law.
Emmanuel, say that again. You were saying it at the same time as Suhad, and I didn't quite catch it. Say what you said again.
All right. There's some terminology we really need to clear up here. There's areas A, B, and C. Now, within areas A and B, which is where 95% of the Palestinians live, they can build as they want without any need for approval from the Israeli government. There's nothing impeding them, and we even have the example of the city of Rawabi, which is built for 40,000 Palestinian units, I believe, something like that.
Which Israel did not approve the roads.
I know what's happening there. And if you will let me, I'll finish. I'm in the middle of my thoughts. I think as an Israeli, and I think if you're living in Israel as well, we know that the bureaucracy is terrible. So you mix your bureaucracy within the Israeli army, and things go very, very slowly. It's not that things aren't happening at all, it's that they take a lot of time. And I feel sympathy for the Palestinians, but it's on its way.
How do you get to gentlemen, Suhad? Let me direct you a little bit. Let me just talk cop a little bit. How do you get from here to peace then? You've got the EU, you've got the United Nations. Saying we don't like what's happening here with the expansion of the settlements?
Organizations like Adala.
How do you get to peace?
Organizations like Adala, which purport to be supporting Palestinians,
yeah, but
I think are making things much worse. And I'll explain. If you let me finish my thought, I want to hear what you're going to say. Excuse me, I want to hear what you're going to say, but let me just finish my thoughts. 1 second. I want to hear what you have to say, but just let me finish this thought. Thank you. I've spent many hours over the last year with organizations like Breaking the Silence, organizations like Adala, Mahsam Watch, peace organizations, and time after time I've seen them tell stories which I then take my own time to research and find out what's really happening. For example, Breaking the Silence told a story about a Palestinian family that had been evicted from what became a firing zone. They said the Israeli army built a firing zone around their home. It sounded awful until I spoke to somebody else and he did the research. He found aerial photographs, and it turns out that they moved into the firing zone, and then when they were kicked out, they started these crocodile tears, and it became an international story. You have stories like in Susia, where there's a claim that a car was shoved down a Palestinian well, and you can see next to that well, you can see a car door which has been strapped there. You look inside the well, there is no car there. And it's time
By
after
all
time that
means,
I've gone and done research into all these
I mean, the
stories, and they
issue,
are lies. And I think if
the
you want to go
issue
and build,
here,
I'm going to finish
the
my
issue here is
thought. I'm
bigger
really
than
going to
that.
finish my thought here.
So Emmanuel, your
The fact
thought's
is
going
that
on for a very long
lies
time. So
are
let me
making
just
this harder.
let me just bring in some more thoughts as well, because I think your thought would go on for longer than we've got time for in this show. Malika.
Atta, I know you want to get in, so I will direct this
Yeah.
to you, but take a listen, because I want this thought here to stand for itself. Femi asked a little bit earlier, how do you get from here then to peace, the peace process? Warrior Rose on Twitter says, did Israel ever actually intend to pursue that with the two-state solution? And there is an answer of sorts in the form of a video comment that we got. This is a lawyer, this is Daniel, and here's his thought on it.
Since 1967, all of Israel's policies have been driven by the calculus of national struggle. The goal of these policies was to make sure that the city would not be divisible and that there would be a robust Israeli majority.
So, Atta, if the goal was to ensure a robust Israeli majority, that does then seem to call into question the feasibility of a two-state solution, or even really a one-state solution, where everyone's rights are taken into account.
Sure, no, every situation is different. The way they treat Palestinians, Palestinian Jerusalemites, the way they treat Palestinians in Area C. The bottom line is, I mean, the Israelis have been very clear about what they expect for the Palestinian state, and that is Palestinian autonomy on steroids. That's what they refer to it, basically being the majority of Areas A, parts of Areas B, within the wall and these other fences. And, I'm talking from my own personal experience. My family lost 65 dunam of land in 1995 that they said was going to be used for a public road. That land, by coincidence, turned out to be the wall. That land closing off my entire village. I have grown up being shot at numerous times around that wall. Me, my brothers, my sisters, going to school in and out. I know the way these things work. I know. I'm just like me, just like everybody else. I'm not special. The bottom line is the occupation, it doesn't matter to what extent the Israelis just went to Birzeit University within Palestinians A 2 days ago and bombarded the door where I teach some of the students. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. And that's about 2-minute walk away from the president's palace, right? Against the president's palace. 2 minutes away walk. The Israelis have full control. You know, there are items that Palestinians are not allowed to import. Items, a jet ski. Palestinians are not really, I mean, it's crazy stuff. They have full control over this entire thing. And the problem is, if it was an issue of time, I'd understand. And I'm sure the Palestinians would be more than willing. But the Israelis do not give the Palestinian Authority, no matter what our critiques are of the Palestinian Authority, to be able to take over the process. And the main point here is 95% of permits are rejected. 95.
If I can step in here,
rejected.
The fence, which is actually more 95% is actually a fence, not a wall. That I was talking about. I'm actually against it. I hate the fence. I hate the fact that it's there, but it did reduce suicide bombings by 80-90%. So you have to take that into account. But you talked about peace before. You mentioned what's peace going to look like. I mean, you have a Palestinian Authority who is not willing to say the words Jewish State of Israel. You have a Palestinian Authority that incites to violence daily in its official media.
Why should Palestinians discriminate against Palestinian and Jewish citizens of Israel?
There's never been a
requirement from one state to say that
calling them martyrs. Those who blew up buses and those who bombed Israeli cafeterias, cafes. You have Palestinian Authority. I'm not talking about Hamas. I'm talking about the PA and Fatah.
I want to know why you still have some streets named after Igun and Lehi leaders that massacred Palestinians. I'm not going to defend the PA. I have nothing to do with the PA.
But those are the ones who are calling the shots. Those are the ones who have been offered a state in the year 2000 and the year 2008, been offered a state and rejected it time and time again. Instead, in 2000, Arafat launched a war of terror against the Jewish state of Israel. So how many times does Israel have to offer a state? We've done that before, and we've gotten nothing. It's blown up in our faces, literally, with Jewish blood running through the streets of Jerusalem, Netanya, Haifa, and we're not even talking about Judea and Samaria. So Israel has made generous offers time and time again, and they've been rejected.
A generous offer would be to completely remove yourself from the
sounds
West
as
Bank,
if we-
Jerusalem, and the
Yeah,
Gaza.
but they call the
Suhad,
entire
let me
country.
just focus on
Yeah,
Suhad for a moment. It sounds like we're so
Israel
far
has-
away from even a peace process, a peace settlement, Suhad, right now with the expansion of the settlements.
No, before. I think Israel has made a lot of war crimes and crimes against humanity, also in the West Bank, also in Gaza, and the launching constant wars every 2 years in average.
When
Now,
Hamas fires rockets
I mean,
at women and children from behind their own population.
that's unfortunate
populations.
also.
All right,
yes,
so guess, let me just hear
That's called
Suhad
war
because I
crimes.
can't hear her. Gentlemen, I can't hear
Condemnation from
Suhad.
you.
Let me just hear her, and then you can rebuttal if you want to. Suhad, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And by the way, settlements and moving the civil society from the occupying power to the occupied territories is considered also a war crime under the Rome Statute. Now, it should be mentioned that Israeli parliament every day now and intensively is discussing the validation bill. This bill is actually an Israeli law, if it will be enacted, and most probably it will be enacted next week. It will validate outposts and illegal settlements in the West Bank built on private land. Now, we should be careful not to shift the discussion about settlements that are illegitimate according to international law, regardless whether they are built on a private or public Palestinian land in the occupied territories. Now, this bill, if passed, basically it will suspend totally the international humanitarian law and will impose on the occupied territories an Israeli national law, an Israeli norms suspending the international law that will serve the interest of Israel as an occupying power and its interest as its political interest in the area without any legitimacy. Now, this is de facto annexation. No, this is de facto annexation because Israel is saying, I am the power here, and my national laws will decide what will happen on the ground in the occupied territories. They're talking recently also about the law to annex Maale Adumim. They're talking about the suggestions to annex parts of Area C. So Israel's attempt to resolve the issue are not real. Israel's declarations to resolve the issue is not clear. And what you guys are saying here proves only one thing, that there's no such intention. The two-state solution does not exist for Israel. The green line does not
I hear you
exist.
that there's no real intention. I want to play just two more perspectives, one who agrees with you and one who may not. This is a video comment we got from David out of the occupied West Bank. Take a look.
After 50 years of Israel's controlling this area, Judea and Samaria, which you also might call the West Bank, and hundreds of thousands of Jewish Israelis making their permanent homes here, it's about time that the region and the international community come to the understanding that Israel intends on staying in this area forever and making peace and making amends with that reality.
So Emmanuel, David made his feelings quite clear, but there's someone else on Twitter from the opposite point of view. This is Professor DeShelby, who says Zionists don't realize that settlements make a Palestinian majority one-state outcome inevitable. What would you say to that, Emmanuel?
Completely disagree with that. I think, first of all, we have to realize that the settlements, as I said before, they constitute about 4-5% of the total territory that we're talking about. They don't represent an immense threat to the two-state solution. And if anything, I think the real issue is something completely different. It's the Palestinian rejection of multiple peace offers from the Israelis. And I think we have to stop focusing on the minor issue, and we have to focus on the real issues, that they are real offers of a Palestinian state that the Palestinians can accept and they could accept, and they could lay down their arms and we can live in peace.
Early on this month,
I mean,
let me just bring in a thought here. Early on this month, Benjamin Netanyahu spoke directly to American politicians. Let me just remind you what he said.
After the outrageous anti-Israel resolution at the UN, the U.S. House of Representatives voted yesterday resoundingly to support Israel and reject this one-sided resolution. Democrats and Republicans alike know that the Western Wall isn't occupied territory. They voted to either repeal the resolution at the UN or change it, and that's exactly what we intend to do. I want to thank the U.S. House of Representatives, which reflects the tremendous support Israel enjoys among the American people. Thank you, America. Thank you, Congress.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump has been tweeting, "We cannot continue to let Israel be treated with such total disdain and disrespect. They used to have a great friend in the US, but not anymore. The beginning of the end was the horrible Iran deal, and now this, UN? Stay strong, Israel." January the 20th is fast approaching. January the 20th has passed. Atta, what do you make of this? Is this some new special relationship between Israel and the United States? How might that impact the peace process and even expanding settlements?
Former President Obama, I mean, I don't know how dare anybody not call him a friend of Israel after giving one of the greatest military aid packages any country has ever seen from another country. I mean, it's astounding. And to be quite honest, I mean, in many ways, when you look at the United States in particular, I mean, the threats that Trump is making against the UN and other international organizations with respect to the Palestinians, I personally hope that the Palestinians decide to make a decision to join every single international organization, which would trigger U.S. domestic law in order for them to have to withdraw their funding and participation in organizations. I think that would be a bold move from the Palestinians, a bold legal move that's in there. And it's in there not because the Palestinians created it, it's in there because the Americans created it out of discrimination against Palestinians. I mean, the bottom line is this: Israel has always been protected with respect to actual, real, binding resolutions that can have real effect within the UN Security Council. So I do hope, in fact, that the Palestinians decide to make a bold decision and join basically every single international organization so that the U.S. has to trigger its own domestic law and not have the same influence that it have in foreign policy decisions.
I will say there are differing opinions online about what a Trump administration will mean for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Warrior Rose on Twitter says, now Israel won't have to pretend to be at the table anymore under this Trump administration. But someone else has some different thoughts. This is a video comment we received from Tariq Reddy out of London. Have a listen to what he told us.
I'm actually less concerned with the Trump administration's impact on the colonization of Palestinian land, as his plans are largely a continuation of decades of detrimental U.S. policies towards Palestinian people.
So Josh, I know you will take issue with the fact that he called it detrimental U.S. policies, but what do you think on whether or not U.S. policy might change under a Trump administration?
Well, I think you're already seeing change. I mean, you just read the headlines to start the show, and you mentioned the UN condemnation, the European Union condemnation, but what was left out was the United States. So it's already after January 20th. We're seeing a new attitude from the Trump administration, one that is more pro-Israel, hopefully, definitely more than the Obama administration. Yes, we're thankful for the aid package, but everything else that he did over the last 8 years has been harmful to the state of Israel. So I'm personally very optimistic what this new administration brings to the table. I'm thankful for those tweets. I'm thankful for the support. And let's hope it continues. We know we've always had a friend in the U.S. Congress. And now, hopefully, things will change at the top, and I'm very optimistic that they will in the Trump administration, benefiting all the people here in the state of Israel. And I think that's the way we're headed right now.
Sure. Emmanuel?
I'd like to pose a question, if it's possible.
Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead. Make it a quick one. We've got 1 minute left in this entire show.
It is a quick question. Do our Palestinian friends on the show recognize the Israeli connection to the Temple Mount and to the
That
Jewish
is not
areas?
a quick question. That's the whole of history. Whoa.
Will they recognize our connection? Yes or no?
All religions should be able to pray. All
Do you
religions
recognize
should be
the
able
right
to
of
pray.
Palestinian people for self-determination?
I think yes. I said yes.
Okay, that's
Can we get a yes both sides?
I'm going to thank our guests for being part of our conversation, and it's a two-part conversation. Thank you, Emmanuel, for helping me co-host the last part of the show. Appreciate that. Suhad, Emmanuel, Atta, and Josh, thank you so much. We spent 2 shows with you, and there's still so much more to talk about. We will continue our discussion online at #AJStream. Take care, everybody.